We were coming up on another town. I had heard our comms guy and the XO guy talking about they'd agreed to try avoiding this one. Instead of heading east into the town, we went north to go around it. It eventually banked east again and finished going through some farmland into more forest. It would be dark soon, and we hadn't worked out a way to go to sleep. I figured we'd just keep driving through the night. I estimated we were at about half a tank of gas. I tried not to think about exactly how much fuel it would take to drive back to our stronghold, where we would be relatively safe. I couldn't think about our safety. I had to think about how we were drawing the marauders away from all of our loved ones, brothers and sisters. So all the people we cared about didn't have to endure what the two girls up front had to deal with. We passed through more thick woods, going steadily up in altitude, and I tried not to think about it. Our XO had a plan. He knew where we were going. I had an idea, but how the journey would be successful was completely beyond me. Something I just had to think about the destination, not the journey. Sometimes. So I imagined us being successful and the journey being complete, and I smiled. And then I felt the van slow back down. "What's wrong?" I asked. The comms guy was a little taller than us and could see over the seats and through the front windshield earlier. It looks like we're being stopped by some unhappy-looking people. The XO explained that we were just passing through and didn't want any trouble. They explained that this was their territory and nobody was allowed in or out. He explained again that he really didn't want any trouble and needed to get going so his daughters could get home. He emphasized that he did not want to wake them up and that they were napping well. They looked at each other sort of puzzled from what I could see. They didn't think to look in the back of the van, I guess. Thankfully they couldn't see us from their angle due to the shadows. They weren't super smart apparently. They moved to the gate and decided to let us go through. We drove through their community, if you could call it that. I remembered we still had roughly a box of food in the van with us. I told all the guys to stuff it in all their packs. It would be heavy and it was canned food, but I didn't want any of it going to waste. It didn't absolutely have to. Sure, throwing cans out the window was a strategic move, but I wasn't letting this food go if I could figure something out. Eventually, everyone quickly stuffed the canned food in their bags, and I did the same. As we passed, I heard one of them say, "I wonder what's in the back of the van." We all face-palmed and puttered along by. Our comms guy relayed back to me what he could see, hiding behind the seats looking out. He said it was some kind of commune, tons of trailers off in the woods, surrounded by more trailers, both directions. Trailers up in the woods, RVs, manufactured homes, every type you could think of. That didn't sound good to me at all. I had my phone turned on, so I put my camera up above the seat and recorded as much video as I could. He said people were starting to look at the van very funny, so he slunk back down to make sure nobody saw. I put my phone away as well. I guess they didn't see new faces around here very much. We eventually got to the other end of their encampment, and there was another gate. Our XO explained again the story that he'd come up with, and they looked at each other and laughed and shrugged. The gate guard said he could leave, sure, but the van had to stay. We looked at each other, and I got an idea. "Hey, let him have the van," I whispered. They all nodded in agreement, and our XO said, "Sure, the van's yours, just let us go." They looked at each other and said, "Sure, we'll let you go." I had a feeling if our XO and the two girls had been alone, they wouldn't be getting out of here. He turned around and said, "Okay, guys, he wants the van." Our armor took that as a cue to open the back of the van, and we all piled out. The two gate guards literally urinated and defecated themselves. Although looking at the clothes, it was hard to tell if this was a new thing, or if their clothes always looked that way, and they smelled horrible and looked worse. I looked around and saw other confiscated cars also. This looked like a little ruse they liked to do. I snapped a few pictures, then we went to the passenger side door. One of the guys was standing close to the door. He didn't back off when I walked up to him. Our tank walked over to flank me, though, and he backed off quick. Our armor came over to my side also, and our comms guy went to the driver's side where our XO was. I picked 4 little somethings out of my bag as the girls were groggily waking up. Unsure what was going on, they were earplugs to put in their ears, so they wouldn't have to hear anything in case it got loud. The girl closest to the door put her hands over her mouth and said, "Hmm." That really disturbed me, but I didn't have time to think about it. I twisted it up and pointed it into my ear. She understood and nodded. I got earplugs in her ears and told her to hold them. She nodded. I unbuckled her and picked her up and handed her to our big guy. Instead of letting him set her down, she gave him a big hug, so we held on to her. The second girl wouldn't come near me. I didn't force the issue, but tapped on the first girl's shoulder. She whipped her head to look at me with fierce and defiant eyes. I pointed to who I assumed was her friend in the car. She nodded and climbed off my friend and back into the truck, and they whispered into each other's ears a little bit. And then the skittish girl nodded, and the defiant girl put her hand out to get my earplugs, so I put the earplugs in her hand. She put the earplugs in her friend's ears, and then unbuckled her, and she grabbed the reluctant girl's hands and brought her to the edge of the seat, and then she jumped back into my big friend's arms. The armorer tapped my shoulder and squeezed into the door frame. He put his hands out, and she put her hands out, and he carried her away with her holding onto him in a death grip. We all got to the other side of the gate, and our XO tossed them the key. The guy fumbled to catch them and dropped them, and we walked away as fast as we could. There was unfortunately only one way to go, up the hill on foot, so that's what we did. Our big guy and armorer were walking next to each other so the girls could see each other to know they were together. I couldn't see where the sun was, and I didn't feel like getting out my phone. Whatever time it was, though, we got about a mile before we heard people in the distance coming up the road after us. Our XO took a key out of his pocket and threw it deep into the forest. We double-timed it, but it was hard with the two children. When we realized we could not run them, we decided to conserve our energy. I listened carefully. I'm pretty sure I heard a chainsaw. I told the guys it was time to cut a new trail. They all agreed, and I found a spot that wouldn't be super easy for them to notice. Then I forged ahead with my shield through the brush. This was as fast as we would ever be able to go without a huge motorized equipment. I shoved right through the brush as fast as I could. It sounded like they initially went by us, but then figured it out. It sounded like there was at least 30 of them, and they were pissed. They weren't complaining about the van, though. They were complaining about something else. As they got closer, I realized what the problem was. They thought we were behind the ambush 2 towns ago. The survivors must have made their way back. In their infinite wisdom, they realized we were late to the meet and figured that that was the connective tissue. We cost them the 2 girls they obviously wanted, and we cost them the death of a few of their brothers. They were so stupid that they didn't realize that we weren't even supposed to be at the storage unit trade outpost. We must have taken the place of another group that got tipped off, maybe buddies with the people across from us, maybe affiliated with the marauders that were following us. The guy with the chainsaw had taken the lead and was able to move faster than I could through the brush. We finally made it through to a strange outcropping in the middle of the woods. I could hear frogs all around over the chainsaw. It must have been getting evening, and there must be a river or pond nearby. All of our guys got into the clearing, and I got out in front to face the chainsaw guy so he wouldn't get into our ranks. He was huge and wielded the large chainsaw with ease. I was glad the girls didn't have to hear how horrible this was. I remember from being a child that everything was a lot less scary if you didn't have to hear it. I backed up a little bit to make the chainsaw maniac think he had some space. Then I rushed him with my shield. I didn't need to knock him down. I just needed to shove him back to stop the people behind him. They were stuck in a column. As soon as I stopped their advance, we might be able to stop a few of them before they hack us down with their axes, machetes, and other farm tools. These psychos were beyond reason. I looked at my brothers to my left and my right. The only 2 had rifles ready because the others were still holding the girls. I understood. They didn't want to set the girls down and have them run off in terror or have them think we were leaving them. We wouldn't let either happen. As long as they were attached to our guys in a bear hug, they felt safe. 2 rifles, one with a 30-round mag and one with a 20-round mag, but stronger rounds. There was room for no error, and no guarantee the rounds would even stop them at all. They'd have to switch to sidearm instead of reloading, and it would be so close. I didn't want to think about it. I did what I had to even the odds. I yelled as loud as I could and charged into the guy with the chainsaw. He was easily an entire foot taller than me and weighed as much as I did, but in muscle. He was prepared with his chainsaw and brought it down to bear, so I would have to run into it to get to him.